Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our next live session. I'll be your producer for our session, but before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Microsoft Reactor channel. With that, I'll turn it over to our speaker for today. Thanks for joining us.
Hello and welcome to our second episode of the SQL and AI Datathon series. My name is Jasmine. I am a cloud advocate, and I am here with Jerry from the SQL team. Hey, Jerry.
Hi, Jasmine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm on the developer experiences team here in SQL, where we focus on the tooling and really just removing the friction for developers to onboard to SQL either on-prem, on devices, or up in the cloud.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jerry. And you will learn a little bit more about what Jerry and his team are working on shortly here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a overview of the SQL and AI Datathon, and then we will learn a little bit more about what we're getting into today. So for those of you who might be new to the Datathon, the SQL and AI Datathon is a series of missions. These missions guide you through how to build how to work with SQL and AI and AI. So, for example, how do you create embeddings? How do you do things like retrieval augmented generation, or as we know as RAG? These missions are organized for everyone. So if you are new to coding, if you are new to SQL, we have these guided missions to show you how to take the next step in your building process. And in addition to that, if you go through the challenge, you're like, I'm super inspired to build something else, you can continue on to the Open Hack Challenge. This challenge is open until February 26th, and this is an opportunity for you to get creative. And the winner of the challenge gets a ticket to SQLCon 2026. That's coming up next month. So if you're interested in getting started, go to aka.ms/SQL-AI-Datathon. So just to get a little bit more into the Datathon structure, the first mission goes through how to generate text embeddings and do semantic search. You'll learn a little bit more about embeddings, embedding models, and vectors. The second mission will be talking centered around retrieval augmented generation, so including another chat model or LLM to give you grounded responses and accurate responses. And then third is going through a workflow orchestration, so essentially working with your first framework like LangChain or Semantic Kernel, and also creating an agent, working with agents, and then finally building a full stack application. And we're going to step through both of these missions, mission 3 and 4, in this session today. So before we continue on into these missions, I want to talk a little bit more about the Open Hack. The Open Hack gives you two options. You can either create a chatbot agent, or you can create a semantic search tool. Not both. You can only pick one. The chatbot requirements require you to just create an AI-powered conversational tool, or you can create a tool that retrieves records and summarizes the results. It's up to you. You can feel free to get creative. And if you're interested in gaining some more inspiration, learning how others have implemented AI solutions, you can go to Budget Bites. This is a video series where we teach you how to build powerful apps under $25. And you can also check out the SQL AI samples repository. And to talk a little bit more about the Open Hack, since it's coming up, the deadline is next week, Wednesday, which is February 26th. The things that we'll be looking for are problem understanding, Were you able to create your chatbot or your search app using SQL and using retrieval augmented generation? We'll be looking at how innovative and creative your approach is. And then we'll also be looking at do you have clear documentation? Does it seem like it's a reproducible solution? And then finally, just the impact, the application to the real world. One additional thing on top of this criteria that's not on this slide is that you will also have to provide a video walkthrough of your solution. Now, you don't have to have your face on it. You actually don't even need to narrate it. Just a short video to show off your solution. Now, the way that you would submit this, and I'm just going to go here into our into the repository. Let me just hop into there. Is you'll come in here into our issues and you'll create a new issue here. Excuse me, and create a new issue, and you select project submission, and then you add your project, and then all these additional details like semantic search, chat app, and then you go ahead and click create, and then your entry will be up for consideration. Always remember to include your video link. Make sure your video link works. So share it with a friend. Make sure that they can see it. And also make sure to share your repository. Make sure that is also accessible too. So make sure it's public. Okay, so let's go back to our slides here. And let me start from where we last ended. And so that's pretty much everything for the open hack. If you have any questions about the Datathon, feel free to ask them in the chat. And like I mentioned before, our next option or our next step is to talk a little bit more about the tooling that we've been showcasing in the Datathon. And one specific one that we are going to talk about today is the Data API Builder. So I'm going to invite Jerry to talk a little bit more about the Data API Builder and how to use it.
Perfect. Thank you, Jasmine. Appreciate that. Data API Builder is something I love to talk about. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to be able to, partly because when developers hear about Data API Builder, they don't believe it. And I'm just telling you, it's real. That's going to be awesome. So the next couple of minutes, as I talk about what it really is and where it fits into your solution, you're really going to fall in love with it. I just guarantee you in advance. And so let's do that. I have first this AKA, I'll be showing you this entire time, but AKMS/DAB/docs. Data API Builder was built by Azure Data. So if you look at all the databases inside Azure, those all are under the umbrella of Azure Data. It's like the super team. And certainly SQL has been a serious contributor to Data API Builder. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. I'm the product manager for it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So when you're building an application today, hopefully it's a data-driven application. In fact, if you don't have a data-driven application, it's just inevitable that it will become that, because every application can only do so much until it starts needing data one way or another. Once you have that database, though, it's up to you how you're going to talk to that database. Ideally, and I don't want to say best practice, because that's such a triggering thing. I want to say instead, like, an extremely good practice is to make sure that you aren't speaking to your database directly. The reason you don't want to speak to your database directly is because it ties all the code inside your application to the structure of your database. And although that might be fun during a POC or at the very beginning, eventually that's going to be architectural debt that you will just absolutely despise. So the way you do that is you introduce an API layer that does all the talking to your database, and then you just talk to the API layer. That is where Data API Builder comes into play. Data API Builder says, listen, inside a normal code base, there are about 3 core things that make up the bulk of all of the code. One of them is going to be the database itself, the structure of the database, the internal logic of the database, interacting with the database, things like that. That we can't get away from, because the database still needs to be done properly. Also, we have the client, and we can't get away from that, because you're still going to want to interact with the client, even in the AI world, where a chat interface has reduced the number of UI elements that we might present to the user. That doesn't mean we don't want to have anything. And so we still have client code, but then we have that third part, that middle part that really is just CRUD operations, that CRUD, create, read, update, delete operation against the database. That is the repetitive, monotonous, easy to get wrong, copy and paste from your last old project sort of code. That makes sense that you could just drop it. Because if you think about the budget and timeline of a normal developer experience, your team is going to say, all right, we've only got this much for the API. What do we want the API to do? Well, we want it to do everything. We want it to have, built-in pagination, and we want to have built-in filters, and we want to have the ability to cache it. We want to support all of the authentication modes that we have. We want to make, and on, right? You start thinking of all of the capabilities you want to put into your API, and all of a sudden it becomes a much larger part of your project than it really needs to be. Data API Builder says, let's just delete that and replace it with a drop-in replacement for Data API Builder. It's not code generation. It's nothing like that. It's just a single engine that takes a configuration file that allows you to basically dynamically build API endpoints for your database that you can use. Standard, normal, not exotic, exactly what you would have built. And that's the important part, is there's nothing special here, but it also makes it so that your client, so that your user can interact with your database over JSON and HTTP, which has to be the easiest way to interact with anything. So you don't have to worry about T-SQL skills on your team. You don't have to worry about whether or not the connection's left open, whether or not the transaction is left open, and on, right? So that's really nice to be able to feel more confident by having less code, right? That's the goal. That one configuration file, it's just a JSON file, allows you to give me your connection string and the tables you want to expose, and then dynamically all of the REST endpoints that you want are available. And not just REST, by the way. We have REST endpoints for everything that you want, the stored procedures, views, tables, whatever it is, as well as a GraphQL endpoint that allows you to do joins inside the API, which is beautiful. In fact, you can do joins against tables that don't have foreign key constraints. You can create them inside the API because sometimes developers don't have the ability to make schema changes on the database. If you can, go ahead. But if you don't, we've got options. And we also now have an MCP endpoint. So an MCP endpoint really matters when we think about agentic applications. So let's say you're using Microsoft Foundry and you're going to focus only on the MCP endpoint of DAB. By the way, it can do all three at the same time or just one. It's totally up to you. We want to kind of meet you where you are in the topology that you're kind of chasing. So if you're using Microsoft Foundry and you're chatting with your agent, you can then register Data API Builder's MCP endpoint as a tool, making it so that when you talk to your agent inside Foundry, that agent then has access to ground its answers inside real data that you have in your database, right? So that's what you want. Why don't you just point your Foundry agent directly to the database? Well, the reason you don't do that is because you don't trust it. What you trust is your API layer. The API layer protects your database, not just structurally, but also in the sense of performance as well. You want to be able to take your database, even abstract it and say some columns don't exist for all you know, agent. Some tables don't exist. And you can say this table you can actually write to if you want to, but the others you can't write to. And you want to have that granular control at the API layer, making it so that your agent, you're not relying on whatever happens to happen inside of the model. Instead, you can say, hey, model, here's a very easy way to interact with my database. You'll be able to figure it out, and it can. And the way that we expose tools is the built-in tools inside Data API Builder say, you could have 10 tables, and it only translates to 6 external tools. You can have 100 tables, and it still only is 6 external tools. The reason that matters in the AI world, and all of you probably already know this, is the number of tools you provide to a model slowly degrades its performance. That's because it has to hold all of that information inside its context. And as you start consuming all of your token and all of the like space that makes your model behave so well, and as you start to overwhelm it, it starts to behave more poorly. So the reason we want to use Data API Builder as the MCP endpoint for every agent is because regardless of the size of your database, we can make it so that we never are overwhelming your model. And so that's the beautiful part that we want to be able to provide it. So you don't have to use MCP, by the way. You can use just REST endpoints. It's so totally up to you. And just as one little philosophical aside, let me just say, we do not support natural language to SQL. And I don't think you should ever support this. It's extremely appealing to do this, especially in like the POC world where you're just building some sort of proof of concept. But a model does not deterministically create SQL content or SQL queries, right? And so you're like, oh, write a query that does this thing. And it gives you back a query. You look at it, you're like, it's excellent. It's more than excellent. It's incredible. But there's no guarantee that the next time with the exact same prompt, that exact same model will give you the exact same query because it's not deterministic, right? It's only probable. And so as a result, we have solved this problem by simply not supporting NL to SQL. Instead, we support NL to DAB, right? So Data API Builder is the MCP endpoint that is a structured signature that allows us to internally translate it into SQL using our query builder. That means your DBAs or anybody who is protecting your database is so much more happy with you because your application or your agents are now interacting with the database in a reliable way, right? And so I said earlier, we built this as the SQL team. We know how to write SQL statements. And so this is an extremely reliable way of interacting with your database. Just as an aside, Data API Builder is not this simple. There's so many other things. You don't need to interact with all of these things, but we have them because so many of our customers really need to have, our API now needs to have other things. So let me just walk through a couple important ones. The first is Azure Key Vault. So the information inside your configuration file include your connection string, which could include a secret like a password. If it does, you can inject that directly into the container that it runs in, and that keeps it contained, but you still may not be satisfied. You still may feel like, I don't want to have that secret anywhere. I want to put it somewhere safe like Azure Key Vault. So we support Azure Key Vault pulling down those secrets. That's what you would want. Obviously, we support Intra Identity, Microsoft Active Directory renamed, and Easy Auth that's built into all of Azure. So when you go to Azure Container Apps or you go to App Services, Easy Auth is the thing that it produces, and it's the best way for you to externally um, uh, integrate with like Google Authentication or Yahoo Authentication or whatever, Microsoft Authentication, obviously, and so you may not be using internal intra accounts. That's totally fine. This is the way we do it with Easy Auth. We support that. We didn't write it. We didn't build it. We just support it. We also just have custom OAuth. So if you have Okta or whatever externally, we support that as well. We're fully observable. We have open telemetry throughout the entire implementation. That all can then be exported to whatever your dashboard is for that, or whatever your trace watcher is for that, which gives you an incredible developer experience. As well as during production, we have all of log shipping implemented so that you can use Application Insights or Azure Monitor. And then finally, if you make it so that your API is able to cache, we support in-memory caching, making it so that pulling from your table makes it so that your database is always busy. But maybe that data you're pulling from your table only changes from time to time. We can cache that in the container so that you don't have to constantly talk to your database. But you might have multiple containers and you want to share that cache. We can do it with external cache using Redis as well. So you can either use your own Redis implementation or your own Redis instance, or you can use Azure Managed Redis, either one. And so we support all of those too. And so you can take this. We have a secure container registry where you can pull our own image, or you can build your own image with the configuration built into it, which is the most likely scenario that you would go to. So those are the integration points that we have. Back end, it's not just SQL Server. I mean, of course we support SQL Server. We want to make it so that you on-prem, that's SQL Server to us, right? When you use SQL Server, you can use Data API Builder and go to town. But also Azure SQL Database, if that's what you want. Fabric SQL, which is Azure SQL Database in a Fabric workspace, or you can use a SQL Data Warehouse. All of that is robust and easy to go. But those are all the SQL family. Moving on past that, we also support Azure Cosmos, right? That means you can use NoSQL, all your JSON database, and you can use Postgres if you want, which means you can also use Horizon DB inside Azure, or you could use MySQL, right? And so you have a lot of options here. And by the way, you don't have to use them one at a time. Right now, you can see there's 8 options down there. You could use all 8 simultaneously, making a single API talk to 8 databases all at once, right? There's a lot of power that you have here. So you're like, oh, but I need this and I need that. put them both in and create a single API surface, making it so that you're providing even more information. So a lot of power there. Okay, let's keep going. Just talk about feature-wise when you're thinking about Data API Builder. Like when I deploy this from a hosting perspective, how do I get it into my solution? Well, this is a container. Just know it's a container. You don't install it. You just run it as a container. Pull the image down, provide the configuration file, and we take care of everything else. That makes it so in a regular distributed application, it just drops right in. So we support, obviously, we support Docker Desktop. And that's super easy from a developer's perspective, right? Everything just sits there, and you can create your own little network inside your desktop or inside your laptop or whatever. It's great. That's what I use every day. I use it through Aspire, to be honest. And you can use Kubernetes, you can use ACA or Azure Container Apps, as I was talking about earlier, container instances as well. But here's the important part. It doesn't have to be in Azure. You can put this in AWS. You can put this in AWS talking to Postgres. No Microsoft's involved at all. I don't care. That's totally okay to me. That we support that all the way through. But we also support pure Microsoft solutions as well, right? Where you are sitting on top of all of our services. So it's really up to you. You can put it in another cloud, or you can run it all on-prem behind a firewall. We never even know it's running, right? So that's totally up to you, because every developer has restrictions that are given to them by their customer or by their company. And we want to make sure that this is an option for you, right? We want to make it so you can look at a third of your code, say, let's get rid of it, and let's do it in a way that is proven, tested, and for the last 3 years, we've just like built this as rock solid as possible. By the way, let me just throw this out there. This is the backing engine for Microsoft Fabric APIs. So when you are using the GraphQL API for Microsoft Fabric, which is our largest like data delivery tool, right? It's Data API Builder behind the scenes. That's what's beautiful. So if you're like, man, I wonder if this scales, I can tell you right now, it does. There's no doubt about it. Okay, those are some of the hosting options. Let me just go through some other things. One, Data API Builder is completely free. It is open source. You can go to the repository on GitHub today. You can look at how we do it. I said we don't do things in an exotic way. Look for yourself. See how straightforward it is. We're basically building the API that you would have built otherwise if you only had all of the team, the time, and all of the budget to do it, right? And so it's really nice that now you have all of this capability, and you could have a POC by the end of lunch. I mean, it's that sort of thing. It's completely cross-platform as well. You don't have to have a .NET application. You don't have to have JavaScript. It's whatever you want, because this is HTTP and JSON. That's it. So there's no library to install. There's nothing, no prerequisite at all. If you want to use our CLI to interact and build out your configuration file, it's a cross-platform CLI as well. And so there's a lot of beauty here that makes it really work for you. We also have all the tooling that you as a developer want. So if it's just REST endpoints you want, Swagger's built in when you set it to be in development mode. If it's just GraphQL, then we have Nitro, used to be called Banana Cake Pop, which is the testing tool for GraphQL. And MCP doesn't really have an equivalent to that, but it's easy to add, like MCP Inspector, which is a straightforward way to do it. When it comes to scaling, we scale both horizontally and vertically. We're completely stateless, which makes it so that you have every option you want. If you want to have ephemeral containers to go up and down in order to be serverless and save money, we totally support that as well. Absolutely no problem. And but it makes sense, right? Because you might have an enormous solution that must be supported, or you might just have this tiny POC that just needs to get off the ground. And we're a perfect place for all of those. It's really great. And I said it was already backing Microsoft Fabric, and that's still true. All right, so that is Data API Builder. Let me just make one more point. Data API Builder with MCP is now in public preview for version 1.7. And so it's easy to get. We've already published the image, and it's already in production for a lot of customers, right? They're already using it. It's sort of amazing that I come across these customers like, oh yeah, the MCP totally works. I'm like, I didn't even know you were using it. That's great to know. And so we have really built something that seems to be the answer to a lot of questions simultaneously. The fact that it's free, the fact that the license says you can use it anywhere, the fact that you can use it in other clouds really is sort of mind-blowing about it. It is a really high performance, feature rich, and completely secure solution to just drop an API on top of a database. And if you're building an agent, an AI agent today for some sort of agentic solution, that agent can't be, you don't let it talk to your database. You let it talk through your API. And we have built the agentic solution that is not just secure, but is also protects your database. And so it's an incredible accomplishment. Your backend database is SQL, no problem. Postgres, still no problem, right? Cosmos, or all of them at the same time. We support an incredible topology. And so Data API Builder is sort of one of those tools that if you really look at the scope of what we're doing in my team around SQL or developer experiences inside SQL, that it's like one of the core things. You can see it in the bottom right. It's both Data API Builder, that cute little guy with the hat on, and then the MCP server below it. Both SQL MCP server is Data API Builder with MCP enabled. And so it's a beautiful thing. There's no man, how do you get all the things to work with MCP? You say enabled equals true, and it just happens. We do everything behind the scenes and make it as easy as possible for you. And which tools do I support of those 6? We just automatically enable them all. You have the control to disable 1, 2, or all of them if that's what you want. And it's an incredible tool for you to be able to add to your toolbox and just accelerate the applications that you're building. Again, we don't charge for it. There's no special premium tier. There's no license that you're going to trigger if you have more than 10 users. Nothing like that happens. And so for me to be this passionate about it and know that it is completely free and I'm not getting commission or anything like that, that's a very cool place for us to be. It's sort of a new world for Microsoft where we meet developers in the open source world the way that we do. DevDiv and .NET all have really blazed the trail before us to make that so that we can really start to contribute to the solutions and remove some of the pains that developers have. So hopefully this makes sense to you, and it's great. There's one thing I just want to point out. This is a kind of a list of all the features. I'm not going to spend time on this slide except for the bottom right, the very last one around abstraction. Abstraction is where your schema is over here in your database, but over here in your API is the abstracted schema, which may not look like your schema. You can change all the names and structures the way that it makes sense for you, making it so that you don't accidentally leak your backend implementations, your backend structures, your backend whatever it is, right? So we have this abstraction layers. It is not the Data API Builder is built against your schema. It is that Data API Builder simply exposes what you want to show. And we do that through an abstraction layer. So you come in your users table, and you're like, yeah, but your users table is going to be called employees. I'm like, all right, we can do that. And we're going to not show the social security number or the email. All right, we can do that too, right? And we can kind of keep going from there. And we can change it because it has role-based security for every entity. So you can have different roles, have different behaviors against different entities. And so that's an incredible opportunity for you to be able to say, I've dropped this API over my database, and now it can do almost anything, right? Very powerful. Here's the link back that I was going to tell you that I told you at the beginning I'd show you, akms/dab/docs. If you drop the docs and it's just akms/dab, that'll take you to our open source repository there where you can see everything just kind of sitting there. And there you go. Jasmine, I love talking about Data API Builder because it is a real solution for real problems that honestly developers hit it all the time, and it removes the friction for using a database in a complex solution.
I agree. In the Datathon exercises and the missions, we were putting this together. It was super, super easy to get started with the Data API Builder, and the pagination was like there, easy, just dabbing it, and I was pretty much add my connection string, and I was pretty much set to go. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And in your deal with under $25, it really helps.
Yes, yes, for sure. So we have actually a couple questions in the chat. One of the first one is around security. There's a question around, is it secure to leave entry data in the JSON file as is?
Is it entry data? What do you think entry data means in that question? I think maybe it's the connection string he's asking about. And so remember, this is your container in your environment. And so you have already injected environment variables into that container that allow it to know more about your internal system. And so if part of that is the password, we can do string substitution inside the configuration file from the environment variables that you've injected inside your app, whatever your container app is. So from that point of view, the configuration file does not have any secrets or like sensitive data. It's all injected through the environment variable and then substituted in memory only. So that's a huge value. Earlier I was saying Azure Key Vault. So if you use a Key Vault to store all your secrets, we do it the same way. Instead of reading from the environment variable of the container, we read directly using managed identity to the Key Vault, making it so that your configuration file is generic. And it also means that you can use that same configuration file when you're in your development environment, doing your development loop. You can use that configuration file and just swap out the environment variable and then deploy it in production and use a production environment variable to swap that out. So no secrets in the config file. That is, I mean, it would work, but it's definitely not what we want you to do. And we support as many options as we can to keep it so that it's not like that. There you go.
Thank you. We have another question here. Kellyanna, they ask, should the database tables have vector embeddings?
All right, so this is sort of two questions in one. Let's start with, in SQL, a database table can have vector embeddings. So all of your embeddings, both the string value or the natural language value and the embedding value can be in the same table. However, the reason that's not what you want to expose to a user. You don't want them to see, I mean, what's an embedding really other than an array of floats? But you don't want to provide that back, because if I have a long natural language and I've converted that to an embedding, that is a monster in size vector. And so if you did a select star from a table that included your vector embeddings, that is going to be very, very large data set to return to a user that honestly probably won't use it. So if you have a table with vector embeddings, at least today, and we're changing this, we don't support it partly because it blows everything up, right? It's so big. You can solve this with a view. That's not that big of a deal. However, if the reason that you have vector embeddings is so that you can do a semantic search in some sort of vector comparison, then you can do that. You can solve that a lot easier by having a stored procedure where you take in the natural language into the stored procedure and simply run a vector search against the embeddings that you have in that table, and then return back the semantically similar results, and then let that be the result of the stored procedure. Remember, Data API Builder supports tables, views, and stored procedures. So this is the easiest. What you don't want is to make it so that all of the hard work that SQL is excellent at, things like doing vector comparisons, you don't want to extract that and then ask the API to do it, right? The API is good at just shuttling data back and forth. You want SQL to do what SQL is doing best at. So should you have vector embeddings in your tables? Without a doubt, absolutely yes. Should you be passing those back and forth through your API? Probably not. If you must, we don't support it, right? If you must, well, we do support it if you go through either a view or if you go through a stored procedure, which is without a doubt the most elegant way to solve it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question here, and I'll try to see if I can distill this. I think this is a question around the connection between the API. Is it between me? Is it public, or is it just between me and the database?
Remember, Data API Builder is a container that you host. So you get to decide where it's going to live. If it's going to be isolated to be a private endpoint to your database, that's up to you. If it's going to be exposed to be a public endpoint to anybody, that's up to you. Your endpoint can be completely anonymous, not requiring any authentication coming in, while still authenticating to your SQL database. It can require OAuth, or it can require, I guess, a JOT token that comes from OAuth that makes it so that inbound operations must be authenticated first, and then we validate those tokens for you. So it's really up to you. Is it public? Is it private? Is it restricted? Is it not restricted? Where are you going to host Data API Builder is a decision you get to make, but we support basically any decision you would make.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all the questions. We have one comment here. This is a cool option. Thank you for your feedback. Is there anything else that you want to close out with before we move on, Jerry?
Yeah, we're adding a lot of features to Data API Builder that are right around the corner. So even as you're looking at it today, one of the things that agentic solutions ask for, really when you're interacting with an API with REST or GraphQL, this doesn't come up. But agentic often wants the user's credential to be passed through all the way to the database. They want to be able to see who's doing it, because auditability of an agent or an AI model is really it's a place where people get nervous today. And so one of the things that we're just about to introduce is OBO, or on behalf of pass-through authentication, which allows you to pass your credential into your agent, and then your agent to pass that to us, and then for us to basically re-sign that for SQL Server to be able to use. And so it's a secure chain of custody that makes sure that your token goes all the way to the database, so that if you use, for example, row level security, you can use row level security against the individual user. If you use maybe you use deep auditing, then all of that auditing information can reflect the individual user that made the change, rather than, let's say, a system assigned managed identity that you might give to DAB. That's what talks to SQL. That's the easiest way, and that's what most people do, is with the SAMI, makes it so that it connects, but it doesn't know necessarily the user. However, the token that comes in, we still take the token, break it apart, and put it into the session context of SQL. So that if you still wanted to use individual like components or roles or preferred name of the user that's interacting with the database, we still provide that to you, just not through a security mechanism that allows you to do on behalf of security. So today we already do that. Tomorrow we'll have OBO security, which is very exciting. Yeah. In fact, I just want to say that I know that this is open source, but it's open source by Microsoft, which means it goes through the same security reviews and constant auditing that a product does as well. And when we want to do a major change or a major feature, it still has to go through architectural and security reviews internally before we can even do it. And then it is monitored over time. And every 3 weeks, we go through a significant security review, like it or not. That's not the way normal open source works. Normal open source is where the latest PR is merged in, and that's the release, and it just sits there waiting for the next PR. That's not the way Data API Builder works, which makes it a very trustworthy component to add to a solution. Yeah, it's really neat. Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know how your team works on the Data API Builder. That's really a cool tidbit there. Nice. We did have one additional question come in. I feel like this is this question could take all day, but I would love to get your take on it. So there's a question that says, instead of vector embedding, can the LLM understand context, inform a query, or do an API call?
Yeah, it totally can. And here's how it happens. And again, not every MCP server, I mean, you see a lot of, like, forgive me for saying this, kind of like nickel and dime MCP servers out there that they're just basically expose your database. But there are things that you can do that are really important, and it's semantic metadata that describes the different operations. So every single store procedure, let's say, every single store procedure that you expose to your MCP server can add semantic descriptions to make it so that the LLM uses those descriptions to better understand how to use and why to use that store procedure. In fact, we provide that for the entity. We provide that for every single parameter that you pass in, so that you can give explicit instructions to the LLM on how to use your store procedure and why certain parameters need to be used, and every field that's returned, as well as instructions for the overall server to say, for example, this is the tool that interacts with Contoso's product database. Whenever anybody asks for product information, always use this as your tool, right? And so that instructs the agent to turn its attention not from its general knowledge that it was trained on, not from internet knowledge that it potentially could query and get and confuse with your data, but to turn specifically to your data as the tool of record, so that it gets the source that it needs to. And then all of the things inside it, the tables that it might query, the views that it might query, the store procedures it might execute, all of those then are decorated by you, and you can use an LLM to help you for sure, but by you to communicate back to the LLM to ensure that it understands properly what it's doing, why it would use it, and what the scenario or use case would be to execute a stored procedure, or what a specific field means, right? So sometimes the name of a field, the name of a table is simply not enough. Even if you alias it and make it a little bit more descriptive, still not enough. So we provide this semantic description that is provided back through the tooling of an MCP tool. And so it's awesome. It's awesome in every possible way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jerry, for your time and for walking us through the Data API Builder. If you want to give it a try, dab/docs, or you can remove docs to just go to the repository for Data API Builder. Appreciate your time, Jerry.
Yeah, you bet, Jasmine. Thank you for having me. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks. All right. So our next step is to talk a little bit more about missions 3 and 4, as I mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and hop into the repository real quickly. So let's take a look at what we'll be doing. So our next step is to essentially create an agent and use it in with either C# or Python. In my example, I'll be using Python. First, we're going to take the experience to a notebook. We'll walk through how to create an agent with LangChain, and then we will do the same exact thing that we did in mission 2, where we performed RAG directly in SQL just by running some queries and using the external REST endpoints and things like that. We're going to take that in and essentially make that into an app. But first, we're going to test it out, work with it in the notebook, and then we're going on to the next step here in mission 4 is we'll have a full stack application. Again, we'll use Python to do this. So the first step here is to hop into the notebook. Before I do that, let me just give you a little bit of demo of what how the app works. So this app is powered by Data API Builder. And remember in a session or mission 2, we created those stored procedures. Here we're using them again, and to jog your memory, those stored procedures do the embedding search for us, as well as turn our queries into embeddings. And so that's what stored procedure is powering this semantic search and AI chat views here. And then here is all the products in our table. You can see that you can kind of just scroll through here. This is again powered by Data API Builder. Adds in that natural pagination in here. And then for semantic search, say I want to look for something like a laptop. And we can see there are all those laptop options. And then finally, let's add, I need a gaming laptop. And let's see what we get here. It's thinking, and it should give us a response here shortly. And there we go. And so out of those searches for a laptop, notice that we have less in our AI chat, right? Because now it's kind of our LLM has focused in on not only just laptops, but laptops that are great for gaming. And it gives us some feedback or its opinion on why it selected these laptops for gaming. Okay, great. So that's what the end result of mission 4 is. So let's take a look at mission 3 and let's kind of build this from the ground up. So I'm going to open up VS Code here. And here is mission 3 notebooks. Now, just to go back in time a little bit, remember that we created these stored procedures here in mission 2. Again, the first one here generates our embeddings. So essentially when the user has a query, that query gets turned into embeddings. And then the next step here is store procedure is get similar items. And that is what creates the vector search. And so just to recap here, the way that we create this store procedure and specifically the query within the store procedure is we're using the vector search function that comes naturally within or natively within SQL. whatever version of SQL that you might be using, so SQL Server 2025 or Azure SQL. And then we also we used another function built in here and I don't have it here. Let me see if I can back up here and see if I can find it real quickly just to share with you. We also used a built-in function that gets our embeddings essentially saves our embedding models and the credentials for that, so we can just access the embedding model without having to do a huge API call every time. Let me see if I can find that in our setup here. It might be my load table. Yes. So here we create our vector index, and then we create our credentials. Okay, and then here is that function I was mentioning, AI generate embeddings. So that essentially creates the embeddings for us. And then the model I have here is called my embedding model, and I'm able to create that right here. So I create external model and create my embedding model. Remember that we can use Azure OpenAI. We also used GitHub models for this to in our last week. And you can also use things like Olama as well. You can refer to the documentation on how to work with create external model, or you can read the comments in this Datathon script. Now, let's go ahead and continue on to mission 3. So here in our notebook, we're doing some quick tests. I have my env file set up as noted in the instructions here. And another thing that I'm also using is the MS SQL Python library. So this is our Python library for SQL. So again, SQL Server 25 or even Azure SQL or any version of SQL. And to answer your question about if it's okay to use code spaces to run this code, yes, this is configured with a dev container that has everything that you need to run this in a code space, and it also comes with a SQL Server also as well. So if you want to get quickly started, you can go ahead and spin this up in the code space. And when you hop into your database, you don't have to create one; it's already there for you. Okay, thank you for your question. So here we are in our notebook. We load my environment variables, and now we're just doing a really quick test here, just doing a quick select top 10. And here we are the first 10 products here. That's great. Now let's go ahead and work with our chat and embedding models. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we're using here. So we're using the LangChain agents library to create an agent. Now, one question that might come up that you might be thinking of is like, why aren't you using something like LangGraph? LangGraph is really great if you have a really involved workload. So say that you need, maybe multiple agents, and what's really important for you is the relationship between how the agents work together and maybe the data or the queries that might be coming in from the user. So, but for this, I'm only creating one agent. So LangChain is pretty great for me. Another thing that LangChain also has is integrations with Azure AI models, models within the Azure AI platform. So things that you can find in Microsoft Foundry, and we're using the completions model and embeddings model libraries to do this. So here we are, just doing one simple test here, just to make sure that everything is working right. And so we're using actually the demo code from the Microsoft Docs to just quickly create an agent and make it and have a little weather agent that lets us know what the weather is. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And what we'll see here is our chat model. Our chat model is connected. And then in our response here, you'll see it says it's always sunny in San Francisco. And notice that it also lists out the tool that we use, which is Get Weather. And so how this worked is that when I created the agent, I gave it some tools. I only gave it one tool here called get weather. Weather is a function that just returns this text that says always sunny in whatever city that you are mentioning. The LLM decides what that city is when you ask questions. Ask the question. Okay, so our model's working, and we are able to create a agent. So let's go ahead and continue on to call the get similar items store procedure to find some matching products. So this, so one of the first things I want to show you is this tool here called find product. So this is the product. This is the tool that's going to go ahead and find the similar items that to perform that vector similarity search. So essentially a query goes in and a response with the matching items from, or the similar items from my vector search show up as the response. So this is my tool here. And this is this is me just testing out my function here, making sure that it works. And then finally moving on, here's my my system prompt. Here's my agent that I created called product agent, has my find products tool that we just walked through. And now here is my query. I'm looking for a gaming laptop with high performance. So let's go ahead and run this. And our query went in, and this first test here is just a search that we did to test our tool, and we're just waiting for our response from our LLM. But while we're doing that, I want to talk, oh, here we go. There we go. And here are some 2 high performance laptops that it found. And of course, you could extract this and do whatever you want with this notebook and play around with it a little bit more. One thing that came to mind, and one question that that I thought of when I was putting this together was, or working through this notebook, was what is the difference between like something like a tool or a skill? You all probably have heard about this, this concept of skills and the new format or standards around creating skills. And one of the things that is really important when you're thinking about things like schools, like tools and skills and prompts, is the difference between the two. And sometimes folks use them interchangeably. But just mention, a skill is what decides what to do, and a tool kind of talks about or executes or perform how what that thing that your app needs to do is done. So for example, let me pull up some slides here. So let me just hop into the right slide. So an agent skill is more focused around reasoning, so understanding how to solve a problem. And then a tool is more about like doing something, grabbing something. So either doing a search, or in our case, using a database or grabbing some data from a database, or even using an API. And so one example that I have here is a customer support app, right? So a customer comes in, asks, what's the status of my order? And your agent has a couple things that it can do, right? It first needs to understand what order status actually means. And so order status could mean, that mean only open orders, or orders that are still processing, orders that have already been delivered? Maybe you're looking for some kind of refund. And what orders specifically are they looking for? What type of order, right? Another thing here is like, what, again, kind of on the same topic, what does it do with multiple orders? What does our agent do when it comes up with multiple orders? And then finally, also, one skill could be that the agent knows what to do with how to give this user their answer for a specific order that they're looking for. So maybe in the past, they've asked what the status of my order is, and they just wanted the most recent order. And at this point, the agent's learned that the skill has understood that this person usually will want the most recent order. And then one example of a tool would be grabbing that specific order information from a database. And of course, the response would be what the agent pulls in. Okay, so on that note, we're going to hop into mission 4, and we're going to just look at some code here. We already took a look at how it works, but just to show you a little bit of some examples here of what our code is doing. So we're kind of using the same exact kind of setup here, except we are using a Data API Builder. And so here is an example of us using Data API Builder where notice that we're just grabbing the URL. So what Data API Builder will do is give us a API endpoint to work with. I'm using the REST endpoint. And here I can essentially, this is what allows me to do that pagination. So I can go through all of my products. So kind of going back to an example here of our browse products view here, you can see that I can just kind of scroll through here, and that is because of Data API Builder. So the way that I was able to get started with it is just doing dab init. So remember that Data API Builder, you can use it as a command line tool. And so I just did dab init, and I was given this dab configuration file. Now, one question was about, storing things like secrets in your dab config file. And Jerry was mentioning that you can essentially, grab these things from the environment variable. And that's what I'm doing in this actual example here. So this server connection string is actually stored in my env file, which is why I'm able to share with you this dab config file. You can kind of see how it works. There's further instructions in the repository on how to kind of get started with dab, so highly recommend you check that out. And then our search here for a vector similarity is kind of the same exact code, and now the only difference here is that we've had it in the app, and this is all in essentially one Python script here. So let's kind of take a look at let's see what else we can take a look at here. Here we're just giving us a structured response. And the front end actually is just a static front end page. You can see that here as well. And that's what we have here. You can see that it's all kind of in one page. So of course, this is for you to tweak, for you to add more onto, for you to give it a go and add your own twist, or if it gives you inspiration to move on and create your own thing for the open hack. So I would highly recommend that you check out the app and check out how it works if you're looking for some guidance on how to build out a front end or a full stack app built on SQL and things like the API Builder. Okay, so that is my brief walkthrough of these last two challenges. And I just want to leave you here with some additional information before we go. Let me just go ahead and pull up our slides one more time. There we go. So remember that the Datathon ends on February 26th, right before midnight Pacific time. And also, there are some additional links that you can access. So first link I want to share with you is the links to that repository that I shared with you earlier, aka.ms SQL-AI-Datathon. If you're looking for inspiration, check out the Budget Bite series. If you're looking to build apps, AI apps at low cost. You can also check out the SQL AI samples repository. A lot of cool stuff in there. And last week we had Carlos on the stream talking about the MS SQL success extension for Visual Studio Code. Really cool extension. Definitely check it out. You can go to their aka.msvscode-ms SQL. Of course, data API Builder as well. And then if you're interested in starting with SQL for free, aka.ms/SQL free offer. That's free for a lifetime of your subscription. Now, one question came here in the chat Can we use Cosmos DB Microsoft Agent Framework? Yes, absolutely. Those are all great options, but you cannot use Cosmos DB to be eligible for the open hack. But if you're just thinking about just general development with Data API Builder with Cosmos DB, yes, absolutely, that is definitely an option for you. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that have come in today. Thanks again to Jerry as well as Carlos from last week for coming on to the session and talking us through all the cool apps that they're building and cool things that they're building with the SQL experiences ecosystem. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm excited to see what you build and what you submit. And yeah, and thank you all so much for your time. And take care, and remember that the Datathon ends next week Wednesday, so get your submission in as soon as possible. All right, bye.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.